Discovered my new girlfriend's social media was full of racial superiority content, and now I must confront and end it. So I'm a 33-year-old guy, and for the past few months I've been seeing this girl. She's 28. Things haven't officially gotten serious yet, but we've definitely had conversations about possibly becoming exclusive. Until last night, I was genuinely considering making it official. But then, I didn't sleep a wink because I stumbled onto the kind of content she actually posts online, and now I'm basically 99% sure I need to end things with her for good. When we first met, she was upfront that a huge part of her career revolves around social media. I didn't mind at all. In fact, it seemed cool, and I remember out of general curiosity, I checked out some of her content. I saw a few videos, maybe 2 or 3, where she was getting ready for dates, chatting about skincare routines, makeup. Pretty normal, harmless stuff. No red flags. Last night, while I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to get serious with her, I decided I should take a real look at the rest of her page. It wasn't a witch hunt, I honestly wasn't looking for anything scandalous. For the record, even if she was on or doing something along those lines, stuff that people can get super judgmental about, I wouldn't have cared in the slightest. That's not what I found. Instead, I came across something I genuinely can't wrap my head around or excuse. A shocking number of her videos open with lines like "as a Slavic girl," or "because I'm Slavic," or "why Slavic girls do that." At first, I found it a bit off-putting, like, okay, generalizing about a whole population is kind of childish, but it could be worse, right? But then I went deeper. There were all these videos with titles like "Slavic girls vs German girls," where she would literally just tear down German women. She'd go on and on about how, unlike us Slavic girls, they don't care about their looks, they overeat, lack ambition. And she didn't just stop there. She'd repeat this stuff about Hispanic women, black women, you name it. Her whole aesthetic seemed to be raising Slavic women up by putting everyone else down, sometimes really explicitly. There was a particular fixation on Northern European women, something about them having too much testosterone. It just came off as so bizarre, like she was deeply insecure and needed to constantly prove that her background made her superior. The weirdest part? She fixated on being blonde. She had videos where she'd rant about how darker hair meant lower social class, or that those people couldn't afford to be blonde. It was just absolutely unhinged. And it didn't stop at ethnicity. She had clips bashing women in general. Captions like, "In a world full of green-haired feminists, be a Slavic Barbie." Her entire presence online just radiated this need to belittle other women, especially if they weren't like her. After discovering all this, I honestly just can't see myself going any further with her. It's the complete opposite of what I want in a person. And the irony? I'm not white at all. I'm definitely not blonde. My whole family? Not white, not blonde. So what exactly was she even doing with me if she's so obsessed with this weird superiority complex tied to her ethnicity and appearance? I truly don't get it. Now, the real question isn't whether I should end things, I absolutely have to. The dilemma is how to do it. I feel we've been seeing each other long enough that it deserves an actual face-to-face conversation, not just a text. I also genuinely believe she should know why this is a deal breaker. Who knows, maybe she'll actually learn something from it, or maybe she won't. But I can't just leave her guessing. The waitress wore a bracelet that looked a bit like my girlfriend's, and she blatantly said, "Wow, that's a cool Van Cleef bracelet. But just letting you know that I can tell it's not real." I remember just staring for a second, thinking, did she really say that? Strida Ek 1. Then there was that time she sent me some pictures and videos from a holiday with her friends, 5 days in Dubai, a full-on girls' trip. In the videos, they were posing, being treated to afternoon tea, all of them these glamorous, blonde Russian girls. But the way they acted around the Filipino staff, who were clearly underpaid migrant workers, made me deeply nauseous. In the videos, the girls looked at the workers like they weren't even people. I tried to convince myself I was being overly sensitive, reading too much into it. I let it slide. But, honestly, dating her was expensive. Every meal had to be at a high-end place, nothing affordable ever stood a chance. She expected gifts again. I'm not totally opposed, but the things she hinted at or directly asked for were, to put it mildly, extravagant. When I said no, she'd start in with, "Well, my ex bought me a Rolex," or something like that. For Valentine's Day, I figured I'd at least try. Bought her gold earrings, spent $300 on them. She acted unimpressed, and inside I was crushed, though I didn't show it. But then came today. As dinner wound down, I just laid it out, told her I had fun with her but didn't think we were a match. That's when the waterworks hit. She sobbed and asked why, and I told her it was because of her social media, and the kinds of things she said so openly about other women, minorities, just her general attitude. I told her I couldn't be with someone who genuinely thought those things, or even someone who pretended to. She looked at me and said, "I thought you liked Slavic women," and right there, I knew there was no act. That was the real her. Like I guessed, she got angry. No drink in my face, no big dramatic gesture, but she started listing all the things she thought I'd done wrong while we were together, told me she was seeing other men, rich men, allegedly even a billionaire, which I don't buy for a second. She bragged about men supposedly buying her apartments, cars, all thanks to how gorgeous she is, but it rang hollow. If she had any of that, I would have heard about it long before. The breakup didn't so much end as dissolve. She disappeared into the bathroom midway through the conversation and never came back. Eventually I paid the bill and went home. But it didn't end there, no, not even close. Suddenly, I started getting messages from my professional connections, LinkedIn, of all places. "Do you know Anastasia?" Not her real name. My stomach dropped. She'd been spamming all my colleagues and professional associates, telling them to watch out, that I'm a scammer, laundering money, all sorts of insane accusations. Honestly, I'm not even clever enough to pull off something like that, so it was as baffling as it was mortifying. I sat there, watching as my phone blew up with tens of missed calls from her. Eventually, I blocked her number and the next number, which I can only assume was a burner or maybe a friend's. Honestly, should I consider getting life insurance at this point? Kidding. Mostly. Truth is, I'm relieved it's over, even with all the chaos she dragged out afterward. I just need some peace, a little space, and time to focus on myself for a while. Dating is definitely off the table for now. I need to get my head right, and get back to living for me. Update 2. I woke up thinking the worst was over. It wasn't. Overnight, she'd elevated from LinkedIn DMS to a full-blown manifesto. A Google Doc, of all things, with my name plastered across the title like a headline, dates, places, screenshots yanked completely out of context. She sent it to my boss's boss, clients I'd only met once, even a vendor we used 6 months ago. She CC'd a press at email for my company, like she was breaking news. It read like a fever dream, and also like she'd been compiling it for a while, slotting me into a story she was always going to tell about somebody. HR pulled me into a room mid-morning. For a second I was convinced they were about to march me out. Instead, they shut the door, slid a printout across the table, and said, "We're on your side, but we need to know if there's anything we should be worried about." I walked them through it, short, factual, nothing extra. They told me to forward everything, not to respond to anything directly, and to call them if I thought she might try to show up in person. I didn't know how much I'd been holding my breath until after. I went back to my desk and started a folder on my desktop titled A. It felt ridiculous. It also felt like putting a seatbelt on. Then it got stranger. A guy DM'd me, on Instagram, from a burner-looking account. He sent a photo of a text thread in Russian and a translation right below it. "He's not rich, but he's naive," she'd written to a chat of 3 other women, my face blurred in a mirror selfie I hadn't even realized she'd taken. There I was, in my own kitchen, in a shirt I sleep in. He said he was an ex he'd been in the group chat too, once upon a time, dropped in for laughs until his name made an appearance. He'd kept receipts, voice notes, payments, threats. He told me he'd filed a report last year when she wouldn't stop showing up at his gym. Gave me the case number like a party favor. I read every line twice, 3 times, felt my stomach do that slow elevator drop. It was like being handed a map of a maze I'd already walked into. Right when I was debating whether to involve a lawyer, she sent me a voice message that sounded like a monologue she'd practiced in the mirror. She cried about her childhood, about girls in school who made fun of her dark roots, about men who used her, and why she had to become this version of herself to survive. For 2 minutes I almost bought it. For 2 minutes I pictured some kinder, earlier version of her and the trapdoor that must have opened under her along the way. Then at the end she said, "Delete that LinkedIn post or I'm calling the police and telling them you threatened me." There it was. The hook in the candy. I saw my mom's name flash across my phone around lunch. She never calls during work. I stepped into a stairwell expecting the usual "Are you eating properly? Call your aunt," but she went straight to, "Who is this girl messaging me? She says you're violent." Violent. My mom had gotten the WhatsApp version of the manifesto, with a blurry screenshot of my apartment door as proof of something. I had to explain to my 60-year-old mother how to block someone in 3 different apps, which would be funny if I didn't feel like I was trying to sandbag a river with my hands. By the afternoon, 2 different brands had emailed me from generic partnerships at addresses. Not asking me for anything, just alerting me that they were pausing current campaigns with her due to community safety concerns and flagging any contact from her regarding you specifically. It seems, between the racist content and the performative PSA about me, people had started reporting. One of the reps attached screenshots of her stories from that morning. My kitchen again, my couch, captions cropped just enough to make it seem like I'd been the devil in designer sneakers. She'd filmed me sleeping, apparently. The timestamp was 2 weeks ago. The idea that I'd been lying there, snoring like an idiot while she rehearsed angles is over me, made my skin go hot. I called a lawyer. The first one I found who would talk to me today. He listened, asked a handful of crisp questions, and told me to stop engaging altogether. We drafted a cease and desist that read like a math problem measured, antiseptic, absolutely not a love letter. He sent it to her management email and the one she uses for brand deals. Within an hour she posted a video crying on her story about men trying to silence Slavic women with legal threats. I closed the app and went for a walk until I could feel my feet again. On my way back, a man stopped me outside my building. Mid-40s, buzz cut, expensive watch. He said my name and I braced, but then he said his own like we were at a networking event. He pointed to a car, told me he drives her sometimes for shoots. She asked me to find out if you still live here, he said in this flat, neutral tone like he was confirming a pickup time. I stared at him for a beat that must have looked like buffering. He shrugged. I told her no. Then he handed me a business card and said, if she comes here, you should call someone first. I don't know whether he was warning me or himself. That night, she tried a new number again. 2 rings, hang up, 2 rings, hang up. Then a text from an unknown email through some app I didn't recognize. I have a video of you saying you hate Slavic women, pay me $5 or I share it. I almost laughed because I could hear her voice and that punctuation. Instead I added it to the folder, forwarded it to the lawyer, and turned my phone face down on the counter like it could catch fire if I looked at it too long. Today I filed a report with the police. I brought the printouts, the screenshots, the weird Google Doc. I felt silly sitting there in that bolted chair under fluorescent lights, telling a stranger about Instagram stories like it was a crime scene. The officer surprised me by taking it seriously. He wrote everything down, asked if I'd been followed, told me not to let her in the building if she showed up, to call immediately. He gave me a case number of my own. It was weirdly comforting, like being assigned a locker in a school I never asked to attend. I don't know where this goes from here. I'm trying to keep my life small for a minute. Work, gym, home. I swapped out my locks today, because I finally admitted to myself that I'd given her a key that one morning after brunch, when things still felt new and harmless and easy, and I'd somehow blocked out the detail until now. I put the spare somewhere it can't hurt me. I told my doorman not to sign anything for me unless it's got my signature already on file. And I slept with the TV on last night, because the dark felt too much like a stage. Update 3. I thought the TV glow might keep the world small for a day. It didn't. I went downstairs mid-morning to grab a package and my doorman did that eyebrows up, lips pressed thing that means he's about to say something I won't like. You've got an arrangement, he said, which I guess is how florists have rebranded booby traps. White roses, ribbons like someone had bandaged a swan, a teddy bear hugging the vase like a hostage. The card said, let's be adults. We're the same. The handwriting looked like it was trying on a nicer outfit. I was halfway to the elevator when my phone chirped in this unfamiliar, cheerful tone and a message popped up, unknown AirTag detected near you. I stood there like I'd just walked on stage and forgotten my lines. Back to the lobby. We pulled a bouquet apart like bomb techs in suits and bad shoes. The bear was heavier than a toy has any right to be. We opened a seam along the stitched smile and there it was, the size of a coin, stuck inside the polyfill. I took photos, then video, then my hands because I was shaking. I kept having flashes of that same card line, we're the same, and the bear's fake little cotton grin. I brought it straight to the precinct. The same officer from yesterday took it and wrote the serial number down, told me they could request owner info if they needed to. He said it in the steady way that made my body realize it was hungry. I left, bought a sandwich I couldn't taste, and sat on a park bench chewing like a person in a seat belt practicing breathing. At work, it pinged me before I even got my coat off. Someone had sent emails from me to a client list I didn't know we had, apologizing for erratic behavior due to a medical condition and asking them to route all communications through her management to ease my transition. She had CC'd an email that was her name with legal stapled to the end like it made it real. They'd quarantined it before it went out, thank God, but my name sitting next to erratic on the subject line might as well have been tattoo ink. I walked down to it and watched them set a filter with my own two eyes because all morning it has felt like the only things that exist are the parts I see myself. In the afternoon I met two people at a coffee shop who shouldn't know each other but did. The guy from the DAMS and a woman I didn't recognize until she started talking and my brain lined up her voice with an audio I'd heard earlier of her crying through static. She hates another woman more than any man, she said, then immediately covered her mouth like she hadn't meant to let it out. They had what our timelines did in time. Thread stretched back a year, too. The same movie with different subtitles. She'd sent them that were the same line, too, a kind of starter pistol. The guy slid over a printed screenshot of a message where she'd called me practice. It should have made me angry. Mostly it made me tired, like a battery that was trying to charge and couldn't find the port. We didn't become a task force or anything, but we walked to the courthouse together after, because the alternative was walking away alone. The civil clerk's office smelled like old paper and hand sanitizer, and everything was very calm in that way government buildings are calm, like they've seen every kind of storm and put it under fluorescent light until it looks like math. The forms were ugly and precise. I wrote my own name too many times and hers once. The clerk took the stack and said, "A judge will look at it this afternoon." I went back to work and sat on my hands for an hour and a half. Then my phone rang with an unknown number and a voice said my order was granted, temporary, 14 days, a hearing set for the week after next. He read me the part about no contact like it was spell work. I said thank you 3 times because I didn't know what else to do with my mouth. Serving it was next. My lawyer gave me numbers for process servers like mechanics, men who introduced themselves by first name and a city. The second one took the job with a sound I can only describe as a yawn smile. "She's a runner?" he said. I didn't realize that could be a category. He called me 2 hours later and said she didn't open her door, so he'd try again in the morning. 5 minutes after that, my doorman buzzed me. "She's here." That was all he said, but my chest went hollow. I looked through the camera feed on the lobby screen. She was outside, phone up, half turned so her best angles were pointed at the glass. She looked smaller than I remembered and also somehow like a billboard. Everything I've been told to do switched on like choreography. I called 911. I stayed away from the door. My doorman had this whole quiet ballet with a lock I'd never seen before, like there are levels to doors the rest of us don't know about. While we waited, the process server slid through on the other side like a ghost, asked me to confirm her outfit, then walked out and said her name with such casual authority it startled even me. She blinked, took the papers like they were a bill for a meal she'd already eaten, then turned the camera on herself and started crying on cue. It was to ram a theater framed by glass. The cops arrived and stood between us like human parentheses. She left when they told her to, still filming, her voice going high and nice with them the way it never did with waiters. An hour later, she posted a story about being ambushed by legal abuse, with my lobby in the corner like a watermark. The caption said men were trying to erase Slavic women, and I had the stupid thought that erase is such a specific verb. My lawyer forwarded me a new email before I could say anything, an offer titled settlement. She would make peace, remove her content about me, pivot the narrative to a mutual decision, if I wired her $10,000 by Friday. He wrote back one sentence, "Do not respond." I added it to the folder. The folder was starting to feel like a second person living in my apartment, one who did nothing but hold paper and wait. That night my phone pinged again, "Unknown AirTag moving with you." I froze in my kitchen and tried to think of what had moved with me. I checked my coat, my bag, the pockets of the hoodie I sleep in. Nothing. I went downstairs with a flashlight and slid onto the cold concrete next to my parking spot like I was listening for a leak. There it was, magnetized up inside the wheel well, someone's inventiveness pressed tight against the ugliness of my day. I took a photo, then pried it off and walked it straight to the precinct again. The officer wrote down that serial number, too, and said, "You did the right thing." I wanted to ask what the right thing is when someone decides that you're their classroom project, but I nodded and kept standing. Her account started coughing. An agency I'd only heard about in her monologue put out a 2-paragraph statement about values misalignment, all the words we use when we mean we took your photo off the wall. She spun up backups like Hydra heads, but they were smaller, meaner, obviously being swatted down in real time. In between she uploaded a video from her car about men using restraining orders like toys, and called me a danger to blondes, which made me bizarrely laugh in my kitchen because how do you even hold something that's stupid without it burning your hands? The gym called me the next morning. The manager's voice had the tone of a person who prepares salads for a living and is suddenly being asked to defuse a mine. "She tried to check in on your guest pass," he said. "We told her no and that she's on do not admit. She filmed the receptionist. We have it on camera if you need." He sounded proud of that last part, like he'd just put a roof over a wet dog. I thanked him and hung up and sat on the edge of my bed staring at my sneakers like they might have an answer written on them in Sharpie. The process server texted me a selfie at noon the next day, the order held up next to his face like a prize fish, and said, "Served yesterday 5:41 p.m. He seemed weirdly cheerful, which I'll take. 10 minutes later, I got an email from a burner account titled Last Chance. It was a Dropbox link and a line, "You'll regret this." I don't know what she thought I'd do, click and scream. I forwarded it to my lawyer and the detective assigned to my case and deleted the email like it was a fingernail clipping. When fear gets boring, it becomes a job. What I didn't expect was the knock in the early evening. My neighbor from down the hall, the one with the 2 plants and the anxious beagle, holding a white envelope. "This was taped to our door?" he said, and then, "It has your name on it." My heart did that drumline thing. Inside was a printout of a photo of me from behind, walking on my own street, time-stamped, slanted a little like it had been printed on a nervous printer. Across it, in blue pen that bit the paper, someone had written, "Talk to me." I think I made a sound. I really don't know. The dog licked my knee. I told my neighbor I was handling it and he nodded, the way people nod when they can smell the smoke. Back to the precinct. I know the route now, the way you know a commute only when you're in it against your will. The detective took the envelope, with gloves this time. He told me to keep my head on a swivel, to vary my routes, to text him if I see her or anywhere. He said, "The hearing is key. Show up. Bring everything." I said I would. I went home and put the beagle owner's number in my phone. I made dinner for the first time in a week like a human who feeds himself. I ate it sitting on the floor because the chair felt too exposed. Somewhere in all of this, a journalist emailed me from a reputable outlet with a subject line that had her name and the word pattern. He wanted to talk about online harassment ecosystems and manufactured femininity, and I realized that my life had become nouns in a headline. I told him I couldn't, not now, not until after the hearing. He was very kind and said he understood, and if it made me feel any better, he'd been sitting on a different story about her since last fall. It didn't make me feel better, but it did make me think of that map metaphor again, and how sometimes you don't discover a maze so much as realize you've been in it since Tuesdays ago. I started therapy this morning. I told the therapist the fast-forward version and then the same 3 details over and over: the bear, the AirTag in the wheel well, the envelope handwriting digging into the paper like if I say them enough they'll wear out and stop staring me. She asked me what safety looked like to me in 3 months. I said it looked like forgetting the sound of that specific phone notification, like walking into my building and only thinking about my mail, like sleeping in the dark without mistaking it for a stage. She said, "That's good. We made a list but not really a list, more like a string I can tug on when the room starts to tilt." I don't know what the next 2 weeks look like. I know I've got a piece of paper that says "Leave me alone," and a calendar date where a person with a robe will say it louder as she makes them. I know my mom calls me every evening now and I answer, even if I'm just sitting there listening to her ask if I've eaten where she always asks it, because hearing her voice is like seeing the horizon through smoke. I know I've become the man who checks under his own car, and for now that needs to be okay. I know there are 2 AirTags with 2 serial numbers in a police property room with my case number on a sticker, and that those numbers feel like tiny, stupid victory flags planted on something I didn't want. And I know that as I'm typing this, my phone is finally quiet, and the TV is off, and the dark is just dark, which feels like a tiny miracle you don't clap for because you might scare it. Update 4. The night before the hearing, the hallway lights painted slow rectangles on my ceiling and I almost convinced myself that was enough to keep anything bad from crossing them. Around 2 in the morning, the bell rang like it had swallowed a shout. Blue and red flickered under my door. 2 officers, palms visible, voices like they were lowering the volume knob as they spoke. "We got a call," one said. "Report of a male at this address threatening self-harm and a female he's been dating." The air folded in on itself for a second. I showed them the order, the case number, the stack of paper that's become my shadow. I held my phone up with the non-calls and non-texts and watched them glance at each other, the tiny flash of recognition that says, "Oh, it's this." They asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. One of them apologized in a way that wasn't an apology so much as a shared annoyance with the universe, and they noted the call on their tablet possible false report, connected case and left. I sat on the floor for 10 minutes after the door clicked shut because the floor felt heavier than the bed and I needed something to keep the thoughts from floating off. Poured in the morning was a conveyor belt. Shoes off through a metal detector, a plastic tray that looked too cheerful, a waiting room of faces with their own stories stapled to their chests. I wore in a jacket I always forget I own, the one that makes me feel like I'm borrowing the body of someone who has less trouble sleeping. She arrived like a billboard peeled off a building and walked into the room, white dress, hair shellacked into a version of an idea. A friend trailed her with a phone until a court officer pointed to the sign about no recording with 2 fingers, no words. She looked smaller again, and also like she was built to be seen from a distance. When they called our names, my mouth went dry enough that I had to swallow twice before I could say yes. The judge had the kind of face that stays very still until it doesn't. I tried to be math. I put the 2 AirTags on the table in their plastic bags with the tiny inventory stickers like they were lunch labels. I slid over the photos of the bouquet with Bear, the envelope with the blue pen "Talk to me," the screenshot of her email trying to route clients through her. I kept the sentences short and made sure my voice had knuckles. When she talked, the room got warmer. She said content 8 times in 3 minutes and cultural misunderstanding twice. She said as a Slavic wham and the judge cut in, not unkindly, with, "This is not content. This is a courtroom." Something in me sat back down at that exact second even though I was already sitting. He granted it the full order, 1 year. He read the radius out loud like drawing a circle on a map. He said the part about third-party contact, the thing about no devices, the words you don't realize you've been waiting to hear until they land like actual furniture in the room. She stared at a point 6 inches above his head and cried exactly the amount that reads convincingly on camera, except there was no camera this time. Her friend wiped under her eye and looked at her fingerprint like it might tell her future. We were ushered out opposite doors like rivals in a movie that knows it's blocking. I kept my eyes on the scuffed floor tiles. The air in the hallway felt like it had just been vacuumed. I heard my name. I didn't turn, but it found the back of my neck anyway. "We're the same," she said, like it was a password that had worked in every door she'd ever tried. A court officer moved into my peripheral like a parent at a playground who knows exactly which kid is about to push. He told her to go. He told me to keep moving. She took 3 quick steps, phone half lifted, and then remembered the line he'd just drawn in the air. The officer's hand hovered an inch from the radio on his shoulder. She pivoted and aimed the phone at her own face instead, whisper crying the phrase legal abuse to her front camera as if the phrase itself might grow legs and escort her home. 2 hours later, the detective called. His voice had that almost cheer you hear when someone gets to be useful at their job for once without the job biting them back. "We got a return on the Apple request," he said. "Both tags registered to the same Apple ID. It's hers." He read the email handle out loud, and it was exactly the ugly little brag I'd seen in her bios. He said they were forwarding the file to the DA's office for potential charges: stalking, unlawful tracking, contempt for the order if they could tie the bouquet timestamp to the first notice. I thanked him the way you do when you've used up the parts of thank you that actually mean something and you're down to rationing polite syllables. In the late afternoon, my building's front desk called me up like a friend telling you the end of a story they've already started. "She came by earlier, tried to leave a letter for you," he said. "We told her no gifts or letter for you, and showed her the notice from the order. She filmed the sign." He sounded almost offended on behalf of the paper. "She left when we said the word police out loud like a vocabulary word." He paused. "Just so you know, we added her to a do not enter in the system." He gave the do not enter 3 syllables, the way you do when something's become part of the furniture of your day. That evening, I answered a number I didn't know because I'm trying to be the kind of person who returns to normal habits on purpose. It was a court clerk from a different borough. "There's a filing here naming you as respondent," he said, polite to the point of academic. "Ex parte request for a temporary order of protection." He read one of her sentences and it was like listening to my own biography performed by a liar who had whispered it through a fan so it sounded different. "The judge denied the ex parte," he added. "If it proceeds, you'll be served for a hearing. Given the existing order, it may not. Just a courtesy call." I said thank you and then said it again because I needed to get it right the first time to myself. At 9, the driver found me again, this time in my inbox. A subject line with his name and a sentence about not wanting to be dragged into this that made me respect him more. Attached was a still from a dashcam time-stamped, black corners, that particular fisheye curve. It showed the florist's bay door in the back of her head, the shape of that white dress under a denim jacket. She handed the teddy bear to a man behind the counter, the bear with its overeater smile and 2 solid torso. The driver had scrolled the florist's address in the body of the email and added, "If you need the whole clip, I have it." I forwarded it to the detective without even opening a new message. My fingers know the address now like muscle memory. Her account started to flake. An agency I'd never heard of issued a statement using all the words that sound like they were invented by a PR firm at 4 a.m. Values, safety, alignment. She spun up new usernames with numbers tacked on the end like sequels that didn't test well. In one of them, She posted a video from the passenger seat of a car about men weaponizing courts to erase Slavic femininity, and I had the briefest, exhausted thought about how everything can be nougat if you call it candy long enough. A journalist published something the next morning that didn't mention my name, didn't mention my company, didn't mention my street, but threaded together enough pieces that you could see the sweater she'd been knitting out of strangers for a while. The headline had 3 nouns and 1 verb, and my stomach did the small flip you do on a highway when you switch lanes and realize you were riding the line already. He'd been working on it long before I became a character. Work installed a new security badge system overnight, and for the first time, scanning into my own office felt like sneaking into a party with my name on the list. HR walked by my desk, tapped it twice with 2 fingers like knocking on wood. I didn't know how much I needed that unspoken smallness. This is ordinary, this is boring, this is just your desk until it happened. Last thing. The hearing papers had said stay away from residence, place of employment, place of worship. I hadn't been to my mom's church in years. Sunday morning, I went. She stood next to me and sang off-key into the part of the hymn where you can't really tell if anyone knows it. After, in the sunlight that only ever seems to exist in front of break and stained glass, a woman I don't know hugged my mom and then hugged me like she'd been practicing it on a pillow for weeks. "Be safe," she said, like it was a dare and a blessing. On the walk back to the car, my phone stayed silent. The dark in my apartment last night wasn't a stage. It was just a room with the lights off. I know that can't change. I know some part of me is waiting for the next chime, the next red blue under the door, the next printed photo slanted like a thread. But also, for the first time in weeks, there was nothing moving with me that I hadn't invited. I put my keys in a bowl by the door and they sounded like what they are supposed to sound like, metal on ceramic, a tiny, ordinary noise that doesn't mean anything except I'm home.